All right, everyone. I see somebody's already screen sharing. So we here on the Friday reading group. We have a special guest over here. That's always not a guest. She's on here often with us. But Gabby, she's gonna be taking over as the lead moderator this Sunday. Uh, Very bright comrade. I know she's gonna do a great job. Leela is also gonna be a moderator for the Sunday group. But today, Gabby's gonna get her debut start as the moderator for our day today, just for this day. So go ahead, Gabby. I'll let you take over from here.
Thank you, Comrade Kwame. And yes, so today we are going to be reading chapter 16 of Ojibwa Warrior. But before we do that, we're going to begin with the Statement of Unity, and I will start with the preface. So, Statement of Unity preface. The U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to quote-unquote reservations, concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the eagle sunk its claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neo-colonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power of the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions and robbing them of their right to self-determination. As Huey P. Newton stated, we have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world, of every ethnicity or nationality, face a common enemy that is destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life. Food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969, by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not too long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, which is the book that we're reading from, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses had developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight up against this capital imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind to establish a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther parties, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a quote-unquote race struggle. He said, it's a class struggle, goddammit. By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and the class consciousness to see their common class condition, therefore the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule, and subsequently used the entire repressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush the emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14th, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the mode for the United Front that will best serve our class liberation by upholding the 10-point program to the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members. We established our pragmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties all organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed to. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All members of the coalition: New African Black Panther Party, White Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Masa Nacional de Brown Berets, Nassau, North Alabama School Organizers, New Era Young Lords, Guardian Rebellion, American Indian Movement, Woodland Chapter. The 6 disciplinary rules. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Number 2, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. Number 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. Number 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. Number 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And number 6, nobody is authorized to speak for the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. All power. All right, and with that, we will begin. We will begin reading the 16th chapter of Ojibwa Warrior. I just need to find the page number again. What page number is it, Sister Zen?
I'm not sure right now. I don't have the book pulled up. Give me a moment.
All right.
Page 196.
196.
Thank you, Conrad.
196. All right, here we go. Found it. Okay. If it's all right with everyone, I am going to start screen sharing the chapter, and I'm going to start reading. If anyone else wants to interject and read half of it, please stop me whenever I'm reading to tell me. So there we go. And there. All right, can everyone see this?
Yep.
Nice. All right, let's get on the road with this. Chapter 16. The Stand Down. My mind is crowded with thoughts of those warriors who fought and died for us. They were brave men and brave women. I shall not what? What does that say? Eulogize their deaths.
Eulogize.
Eulogize.
Eulogize?
Yep.
Gotcha. I will not eulogize their deaths. Instead, I shall draw on their life memories and be strengthened. That is Banks Ojibwa. At Wounded Knee, we were starving. Shelves were bare. We had ran out of food. The feds had tightened the noose around us. It became harder and harder for our backpackers to get the needed supplies to us. We were always hungry now. One night, a small plane suddenly landed on the road in front of the trading post. Owen Luck and Rocky Madrid had gotten a plane, a pilot, and 400 pounds of food for us. We had gotten we were surprised and delighted. The feds were also surprised, but less happy. Although it may sound like a lot of food, when you consider that we had to feed an average of 350 people every day, um, it is easy to say that 400 pounds of food would not last long. We have received garbled messages that other friends on the outside were organizing an airdrop with even more food for us. We yearned for it like a man stranded in a desert yearns for water, but waited in vain. Then early one morning, we heard the sound of engines overhead. People were shouting, "Our planes are coming!" But it was only two phantom jets screaming over us, breaking the sound barrier and temporarily deafening all of us. We were taking aerial photographs. They were taking aerial photographs of our positions for the benefit of the marshals. It was not what we were hoped. It's not what we had hoped for. I began to doubt that this airdrop was real. I reassigned myself to the likelihood that it was not going to happen. On April 17th, at about 5 o'clock in the morning, I was tapping out my daily newsletter when I heard a humming that sounded like APCs revving up. It got louder and louder until I realized it was a different kind of noise. All of a sudden, Carter Camp came outside and looked. Kamuk and I hurried outside to see three Piper Cherokees coming in very low over the hills to avoid radar detection. The small single-engine planes began circling about 500 feet above us. Their cargo doors had been removed, so we could see some men kicking out large duffel bags. 7 duffels floated down on parachutes that barely had enough time to open before they hit the ground. Only one chute failed to unfold. That bundle broke open when it hit the ground. 2 duffels fell so close to the Fed's position that we could not immediately retrieve them, but did so later under the cover of night. I don't think the Feds knew what was going on for the first 15 minutes or so, but when they realized there had been an airdrop, we received sporadic fire from them. Then they began using 30 caliber machine guns and tried to shoot one of our bundles to pieces. Our people were jumping up and down, yelling, "Food, food!" I thought, God damn it. Goddamn, somebody cares. They care if we survive or not. And they knew how to deliver this manna from heaven. Plus, the planes were called Cherokees. It was almost too good to be true. The whole airdrop lasted barely 5 minutes. It had been carefully timed for daybreak when the marshals and FBI would still be snoring in their bunkers. The lead plane made a second pass to drop one more load or 250 feet. Then the Cherokees took off in a big hurry in different directions, bobbing and weaving to prevent the marshals from reading the numbers on the wings. By this time, the Feds were shooting at the planes with machine guns. There was some significant damage to one of the planes, but they all escaped without being crippled. Months later, I had a chance to meet the organizers, pilots, co-pilots, crews, and even some of the folks who contributed funding for the effort. The man who conceived the idea, Bill Zimmerman, a white friend, also piloted one of the planes. He later wrote a book about the airdrop called Airlift to Wounded Knee, which is a long and fascinating story. The other 2 pilots flying those rented Cherokees were Billy Wright, a black pilot with superb flying credentials and a zeal for helping Indians that made him the perfect flight leader, and Jim Stewart, a white skydiver who had made over 600 parachute jumps. Damn, I could never do that. Larry Levine was a co-pilot who had raised a lot of money for the airdrop. Numerous others also helped make this miracle happen. About 50 of our people lost no time dragging the heavy bundles away from the firing line into the security building. We cut them open and began to inspect our gifts. There was a ton of food, including cheese, flour, pinto beans, rice, sugar, coffee, baking powder, salt, lard, powdered milk, peanuts, raisins, ham, oats, chocolate bars, and cartons of cigarettes. There was also a lot of toilet paper, bars of soap, and even packages of Tampax. Our benefactors who thought our benefactors had thought of everything. We took some of the food immediately to the little white house where we had our kitchen set up. Our happy women were eager to start cooking. Within each of the bundles, we found a printed message for all of us. It began to the independent Oglala Nation and their friends at Wounded Knee. Your struggles for freedom and justice is our struggle. Our hearts are with you. This is a fight against an unyielding and brutal government that makes the poor people of the world its victims in its search for power and profits. One lesson is to realize that the frustration and disillusionment we may at times feel are only the result of a misunderstanding of our real ability to affect the course of this country's policies. Wounded Knee shows us that no matter what the setbacks, just struggles are not stopped by any president or any policy. I read the message out loud to the people after we all gathered together in a large room inside the trading post. It was very quiet as I read those words. I began to choke up, feeling a tide of emotions rise in me. I finished the page and I looked about me. People were crying openly and quietly embracing. I said, all right, let's get to work. Grab all the duffels, make sure that they all are emptied, sort out all the supplies, and let's start cooking. And that's what we did. For us, the food was like the original meaning of Thanksgiving. All the warriors came in from the lines except for a very few who had to stay at their posts. We brought food to those men. Gladys, Bezonet, and other cooks prepared a fantastic meal and evening. We didn't know that we didn't know then that we were heading into one of the saddest days since the siege began. Even though this day began in such a miraculous way, we had reason by the end of it to offer prayers of sorrow along with our prayers of thanks. Frustrated by our unwillingness to give in, the feds became vicious. About an hour after the airdrop, they sent their helicopters, Snoopy, into the air over the encampment. A sniper in the copter began taking a bead on individuals, a young kid here, a woman there, a medic, or a dog. Someone else in the copter aimed a handheld M16 automatic at us. God, this is fucking sad and disgusting. Eddie Whitewater and a few small children were walking back to their house with a bag of food when bullets riddled the dusty ground around him. He and the kids just stood there transfixed, not knowing which way to run. Our guys opened fire and the helicopter in order to distract attention from Eddie. One of our bullets actually hit Snoopy, which was advised by Red Arrow to leave the area. Our fire gave Eddie and the children a chance to roll into a ditch and hide. What began as sporadic fire in the early hours after dawn became a full-blown attack of unleashed fury from the feds. The firefight lasted all day and spilled over into the night. The feds threw everything at us but the kitchen sink. M30s, M60s, 50 caliber machine guns, M79 grenade launchers, CS gas, aerial illumination flares, a high-powered strobe searchlight on each APC, and finally rockets of launch massive gas attacks. Fucking hell. During a typical short exchange, the feds hit us with anywhere from 5,000 to 10,000 rounds. When we answered them with less than 50 rounds, streams of tracer bullets crisscrossed the village from all directions, raking it from end to end, concentrating on anything that moved. Some areas were littered with empty machine gun shells. The effect of 50 caliber machine gun bullets was frightful. They simply tore the place apart, knocking entrance holes and the size of oranges into the walls and exit holes the size of soccer balls. the 70 to 75 Warrior, meaning our bunkers, had only about 10 small caliber bullets each to defend us. Our ranks had increased the night before when a small group of new supporters had somehow hiked and and undetected over the hills. Among them was a couple from North Carolina, Frank Clearwater, and his pregnant wife, Morningstar. Frank was part Apache, and Morningstar was Cherokee. They were not there were they were not members of AIM, but had heard about the trouble we were having and hitchhiked all the way from North Carolina home, wanting to help us in any way they could. He was 47 years old and she was 10 years younger. Henry Henry Wahawasuk brought them to the command headquarters and introduced them to me. I embraced them, telling them how glad I was that they had come to help us. I asked if they wanted to cook or if they wanted to pull guard duty or patrol. Frank told me, I came here to fight. My wife can cook. She can be a part of that. Those were the only words I had with Frank. I introduced him to Stan Holder, who asked if they were tired and wanted to rest since they had been walking all night. They went to lie down, he on a cot inside the little Episcopalian chapel north of the sick. Sorry, what?
Episcopalian.
Episcopalian chapel north of the Sacred Heart Church. Around 9:30 a.m. That morning, a burst of fire from the feds sent a 30 caliber slug through the wall of the church, crashing through the back of Frank's skull. Oh no. For over an hour, our medics could not even get to Frank because of the heavy fire the feds poured in on us. Finally, two brave women medics, Laura Lee Decora and Madonna Gilbert, ran through the curtain of bullets, entered the church, put Frank on a stretcher, and carried him to the hospital. They were helped by three men part of the way. The medics wore helmets and armbands with red crosses, and they waved a white flag on a broomstick. Even so, they were continuously shot at by the Fed snipers. The marshals at road block number 6 fired at the stretcher barriers all the way to the hospital door. It was a miracle they were not all gunned down. We contacted Red Arrow to request a helicopter to take Clearwater to the hospital, but Chief U.S. Marshal Wayne Colburn gave the order, no helicopter is to go into Wounded Knee. If they have any wounded, bring them out under a white flag to road block number 1, and they will be flown from there. So we had to do that, and Clearwater was airlifted to the reservation hospital in Pine Ridge. The medics there were horrified when they saw him and said, we can't handle this. Clearwater was eventually flown to a hospital in Rapid City. His wife, Morningstar, had been assured that she would be allowed to be with him. But upon her arrival in Pine Ridge, she was arrested, dragged weeping from her critically injured husband, and thrown into the overcrowded tribal jail where she, visibly pregnant, had to sleep on the cement floor. Fucking God, that is just fucking depraved as fuck. They gave her nothing to eat but a bowl of cornmeal mush. She remained incarcerated while Frank underwent surgery. Almost 2 days went by before Morningstar was allowed to be at her husband's bedside. He never regained consciousness and died 8 days after he had been shot. Morningstar wanted to have her husband buried like a warrior inside the perimeter of Wounded Knee near the spot where he fell. But of course, Dick Wilson, of course his name is fucking Dick, forbade this, saying that there were tribal laws forbidding a non-Oglala to be buried anywhere on the Pine Ridge reservation. That was bullshit. He lied as usual. There were plenty of non-Oglalas and non-Indians laid to rest on the res. In the meantime, Crow Dog had come back from the fruitless negotiations in Washington, D.C. He offered to have Clearwater buried on his land. A delegation from Wounded Knee was allowed to accompany Frank Clearwater to his last rest. Both the tribal big shots of Pine Ridge and Rosebud set up roadblocks to stop our funeral caravan. At Pine Ridge, they even opened a coffin to search for his search it for weapons. In the end, we overcame all of these attempts to prevent us from burying Frank in a sacred traditional way. There was a one-day wake held at the home of Chief Frank Fools, Crow, 20 miles from Wounded Knee. Then Crow Dog gave Frank back to Mother Earth on the Crow Dog land, saying prayers in the old Lakota manner. The feds had began to deny their actions and to spread a rumor that Frank Clearwater wasn't even an Indian. Bro, what the fuck? Like, how do you... Jesus
I can read if you
fuck.
want, Gabby.
That's fine. Am I starting to sound inaudible or something?
No. I'm just saying I just offered because I mentioned it earlier.
Oh, of course.
I,
Well,
I
I
wrote
mean,
it
sure.
I wrote it in the chat, but I wasn't sure if you saw it.
I can't see it because if I go out the screen share, it'll stop. So I couldn't see it.
Yeah, that's what I
Sorry.
figured. You're fine. Go
But
ahead.
yeah. No. I was gonna say if you want to read, you can do so.
All right, cool. All right. So, well, he was an American Indian brother and he gave his life supporting his people and our beliefs. He died for us. That was enough for me. 5 others were also wounded on that same sad day that had begun so well, but they all eventually recovered. We mourned Frank Clearwater for 4 days. On the second day of mourning, the feds tried to drive our guys out of their bunkers with helicopter launched CS2 gas. During one massive wave of tear gas, our people who were stationed in the little Bighorn bunker ran out through the escape trench and plunged into the freezing creek to wash the tear gas from their faces and clothes. Wounded Knee became more and more dangerous as each day passed. It was impossible to be anywhere out in the open without instantly drawing fire. People continued to come and go, but more were leaving than arriving. During the last 2 weeks of April, things were happening rapidly. We knew that we could not hold out indefinitely against the overwhelming strength of the government. Our ammunition was running out. Some warriors had no bullets left. With so many mouths to feed, the food from the airdrop lasted just 10 days. The situation was critical. In the back of my mind was the thought that if we finally were overwhelmed, all of our leaders should not be caught in the net. Of course, I did not say this out loud. I decided to stay until the last and wanted Carter Camp and Crow Dog to stay also. Russ never did come back from negotiations in Washington. I persuaded Clyde Belcourt to leave, saying I wanted him to take over our Minneapolis office to run AIM affairs from the outside. Looking back, I can see that too many of our leaders were at Wounded Knee and that it was foolish to expose them to capture. Not only the AIM leadership was imperiled. Our greatest medicine men were there. Frank Coles Crow, Pete Catches, Wallace Black Elk, Charlie Kills Enemy, and such chiefs as Tom Badcock, Matthew King, and Pedro Bissonette. We had too many of our leaders inside the perimeter and not enough on the outside. Vernon Belcourt had never been inside the perimeter. He remained outside, acting as a roving ambassador for us. He had a wonderful way with the media. He made speeches, lectured on TV, and arranged for press conferences. He also had a gift for coining catchy, memorable phrases. Ted Means, Russ's brother, was asked to be our general support gatherer, and Pedro Bissonette went to Rapid City to keep the Underground Railroad going. He knew the terrain well and could tell the backpackers which way to go and what to look out for. Nogashik and Annie Mae had also left by this time. Annie Mae told me that she was losing track of her 2 daughters. She yearned to hold them in her arms again before she continued working for our cause. She did come back after the siege and would later give her life for us. On April 15th, Crow Dog had returned from his failed negotiation in Washington, D.C. to a big welcome. He had been away about 10 days. I admired him for returning that late in the game when all signs were pointing to our being overwhelmed by government forces. He didn't have to come back to us. He could have stayed on the outside where he was needed every bit as much as at Wounded Knee. Wallace Black Elk could have provided spiritual guidance inside the knee, but Crow Dog was the center. His gravitational pull held us together. There was never any doubt in my mind that without Crow Dog, some of our people would have just given up. We were strengthened by his presence. He had that special gift of power. April 26th was the biggest and fiercest firefight of the siege. It was also the last. It went on for 2 days. The goons started it by firing in the direction of the feds to provoke a big shootout. The feds naturally thought we were firing at them and opened up with everything they had. Our warriors returned fire. We tried to tell the feds over the two-way radio that the goons had started the firefight, but the situation was already out of control. The fight was feeding on itself, growing in intensity from minute to minute. I was up at 5 a.m. as usual, and Kamuk was going out on her assignments with Veronica Killswright, who was Crow Dog's companion at the time. Or Verona, I think I said Veronica. Verona Killswright is. They were going from bunker to bunker with first aid kits to see how the guys on the firing line were doing and to give them a morale boost. The shooting began around 9:30 a.m. that morning. After weeks of firefights, you kind of get used to them, but I sensed right away that this one was different. It was terribly intense and it never stopped. All hell had broken loose. There was frantic radio traffic between our bunkers and also between us and the feds at Red Arrow. The feds radioed, "Hey, you Indians, if we see one of them dudes jumping out of the bunker with long black pigtails, and if we capture him, first we're gonna cut off his hair and then we'll cut off his balls." Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah. Little Bighorn bunker radioed back, "Go to hell." Last Stand bunker reported, "We're being hit hard." Denby bunker announced, "We're under heavy fire also, and we're running out of ammo. Hawkeye, can you get us any backup?" Over. Hawkeye bunker radioed to Denby, "Keep your heads down and hold on. Don't waste any ammo. They would like to drive you out of that hole. Don't let them." Over. Red Arrow radioed Wounded Knee with, "Be advised that if what does that say? That if we receive one single round, we'll hit you with everything we've got." Little Bighorn radioed back to Red Arrow, "Fuck you." Over. Oh, okay. And so it went hour after hour, all day long. Kamuk and Verona were still making their rounds, bringing coffee to the bunkers. When they hadn't come back by 2 p.m., I began to get very worried. Then Lorelei Decora came back from her tour of duty and told me, "They're all hiding in a gilly. They're pinned down, and I think they've gone to sleep." Gone to sleep? I couldn't believe it. They had taken refuge in that gully, with bullets whizzing over their heads for 3 hours, and they were asleep. But it was true. They were that tired. They had their winter jackets on and were pretty cozy. I was impressed. The fighting carried over into darkness and through the following day. It just went on and on. In the early afternoon of April 27th, I heard somebody yell, "We've got a guy down." They were trying to reach him where he had fallen near the Last Stand bunker. He had been pinned down by a sniper and was hit as he came up to see where the shots were coming from. I ran out of where Kamuk and I were staying. Crow Dog was already out there ordering a stretcher to try to bring him in. The shooting was fierce. Excuse me. But Crow Dog kept urging the stretcher bearers on. "Keep going, going, going." We had called Red Arrow to cease fire, that we had a man down, but it took a while for bullets to stop. Stan Holder ordered the ceasefire, and Carter Camp yelled, "Get that man over here." Finally, there was a lull in the shooting. The limp form was brought by stretcher back to the designated first aid area. It was then I discovered that it was Buddy Lamont, Kamuk's uncle and brother to Lou Bean. This came as a tremendous shock to me. just 31 years old, and his life was over. Crow Dog opened Buddy's shirt and took it off. There was a clean wound, a bullet hole right through his heart. He had been shot in the back, and the slug had gone right through and out the front. I had my hand under his head. He was still warm. It looked peaceful, as if he was sleeping. Crow Dog bent over Buddy, weeping and saying something to him. He sang a death song as he put sage into Buddy's wound and then offered a prayer for the fallen warrior. Kamuk came running. She and Buddy had been very close. They loved each other. Kamuk cradled Buddy's body in her arms, hugging him and sobbing, Buddy, Buddy, Buddy. Kamuk cried uncontrollably, screaming at the feds and calling them killers and murderers. This was the moment I had always feared. One knows that in a struggle like ours, somebody might be hurt or even killed. It's inevitable in a confrontation that turns violent. Nonetheless, you pray that is not going to happen. A death hurts you so much and the pain goes very deep. Buddy had come to me saying, quote, I want to be with you, putting his life in my hands. When somebody in your care is hurt or killed, you sense the sorrow of the family and feel guilty thinking that his death is your fault. That is what I felt. That is what Carter and Stan felt. I watched Kamuk and Lou Bean, Buddy's sisters, weeping and holding Buddy. The strength of their love shone like a light about them, and I thought how beautiful, how strong and brave Kamuk and Lou are. When our side had called for a ceasefire, it had taken a long time for the feds to quit shooting. Only when we informed Red Arrow that a man died, or we had a man dead, did they finally cease their firing. We requested that they let us bring Buddy out, accompanied by the people closest to him. That request was granted. The feds gave us their word that nothing would happen to those accompanying the stretcher, that nobody would be arrested. So our men lined up in 2 rows, standing like an honor guard as the body passed the roadblock and the little procession moved slowly down the road. Kamuk and her sister Bernice, Lou Bean and her husband, Mary Ellen Moore, carrying her newborn son, and a couple of Buddy's other relatives accompanied the stretcher out of Wounded Knee's perimeter. As soon as their feet stepped onto Pine Ridge land, they were all arrested and handcuffed. Oh my God.
Jesus fucking Christ.
Right. They were taken to jail by Wilson's tribal police and were detained overnight. Some were kept longer. Mary Ellen Moore was separated from her 16-day-old baby and transported the next day to the Pennington County Jail in Rapid City, where she was fed only crackers and made to sleep on the cement floor. Wow. It took her several days to get out. Kamuk's mother, Chanel, took care of Mary's baby in the interim. When the goons were told by the FBI that they were not supposed to arrest Buddy's family, they shrugged it off, saying, you're welcome to take them anywhere you want them, but tell them they better not come back to Pine Ridge because something might happen to them. The FBI didn't know quite what to do, so they dropped some of the women at the Hildegard Patch's house at the old Gala house on the res. Preparations had been made for Buddy's funeral. His mother, Agnes, wanted him buried at Wounded Knee. We all wanted this. Of course, Wilson said that Buddy could not possibly be put to rest there, that he would not allow it. The FBI declared that burying Buddy at the knee was out of the question because it would only stir up trouble. We told them the people were already fasting and involved in sweat lodge ceremonies. Agnes had gone into Wounded Knee just before Buddy was killed. She was worried about him and had gone in with some food and clean clothes for her son. She had wanted him to come home. Buddy replied, no, I've got 2 nieces in here, Kamuk and Bernice, and they are young, and my sister is in here too. I have to stay for their protection. I'm not going. Agnes was afraid for Buddy and for her grandchildren inside the perimeter because of Wilson's threats to go in there with his goons and quote unquote wipe everybody out. The food she packed and carried to Buddy, where did I go? Oh, there it is. During the dark hours before dawn was his last meal. Buddy had told her then, if anything happens to me, I want to be buried right here at the knee. Just cover me up in my bunker because I'm here for a good cause. I wouldn't want to be buried at Pine Ridge. If I'm gone, I don't want any of Dickie Wilson's crowd coming around for me, just our people. So Agnes and Kamuk confronted Wilson. Agnes told him there's no way that Buddy is going to be prevented from his rightful burial at Wounded Knee. They pointed out that Buddy was tribally enrolled as a member of the Oglala Nation with the right to have his grave anywhere on the Pine Ridge Reservation. Finally, Wilson shook his head and said, "We'll go on, bury him out there." A few days went by as preparations for Buddy's funeral were made. The weather was cold, rainy, and miserable. One night, the trading post caught fire when somebody accidentally tipped over a kerosene lamp, which immediately ignited some old curtains. There was a frantic scramble to put the blaze out, but the water had been turned off. People grabbed buckets and ran into the night to the old windmill for water. They slogged back and forth through the mud and cold rain, but it was no use. The fire burned all night. The ammo we had stored in there blew up in the fire. The place was a total loss. Then the day arrived for Buddy's burial. The feds tried to impose restrictions on the funeral. Only 10 close relatives could go into Wounded Knee with Buddy's coffin. The whole ceremony could last no longer than 3 hours, and so on. But Agnes fought back, saying, "Listen here, I have kids, and then there are 36 grandchildren, and there are wives and husbands to consider." We ignored all the restrictions. In the end, everybody who needed to be there with us got in.
Oh yeah.
First, right. First was the wake at Porcupine that night. All of the chiefs and medicine men and all of the traditional elders were there to honor Buddy. There were hundreds there mourning their dead brother. Inside the knee, there was talk among the warriors about giving Buddy a 10-gun salute, but I told Carter and Stan, no. A 10-gun salute is for white soldiers who serve for pay and for a pension. But Buddy was our warrior. He deserves a 100-gun salute. Everything was set for the funeral. We had a ceasefire in place, and we were waiting. Finally, we saw them coming through the roadblock. Buddy's coffin was in the back of a pickup that had served as a hearse. We carried him up to his last resting place. All of the chiefs and spiritual leaders walked beside us, as well as Agnes, who was flanked by Kamuk Lubin and her other 5 daughters, and the whole family. There were about 30 people in Buddy's immediate family, with all of Agnes's kids, grandkids, and great-grandkids. Russell's brother, Bill Means, and all of the AIM people stood over on one side and sang the AIM song. We had one final look at Buddy. The casket was open at the foot of the mass grave where he was going to join the ancestors who had died in 1890. I leaned down to hug him. Someone had fastened a sacred eagle's feather to his hair. One by one, men and women from many different nations came forward to pay their respects. I told security that I wanted a 100-gun salute. 10 men with rifles or shotguns to stand at attention and fire off 10 rounds each. So we gave Buddy his 100-gun salute, and with it, we also honored Frank Clearwater and all the other brave men and women who fought so hard. I happened to look up and see the marshals, FBI, BIA, police, and goons standing on their hill, silhouetted against the horizon against us, or watching us. I thought, go ahead and watch, witness our strength and commitment. We put Buddy down at the end of the last song, covering him up as the last flowers were put in place. Buddy lies now with the spirits of the slain women and children buried in the mass grave. A headstone was later placed over his grave. It bears his army serial number and the name of the unit he served with in Vietnam. It also bears these words: 2,000 came here to Wounded Knee, 1 stayed. Buddy's burial was the end of our struggle. Negotiations went on for a few days, but we all knew it was over. Talks were almost complete, and it was time to finish them. We hoped the government would keep their promises to hold hearings for the Fort Laramie Treaty of 1868 and end corruption at Pine Ridge. As of May 5th, the only leader remaining at Wounded Knee were Carter and I, as well as our spiritual leaders, Leonard Crowdog and Wallace Black Elk. Carter and I refused to sign the final agreement because we did not want to put our names on a document of surrender. Meanwhile, Kamuk had come back in. She had walked on foot over 5 miles in the dead of night to join me during the last days. I had felt sad and lonely while she was gone. Now I was happy that she was back. But on May 5th, I had to tell her the final stand down would be on May 8th. And then the marshals will come in and probably the goons too. So you must leave for your own protection. Lubin said, Dennis, the police are waiting for you. The FBI is waiting too. Kamuk added, an FBI man wanted me to persuade you to give yourself up. He said they would guarantee you safe passage to the nearest jail. We all laughed, and I said, thank you, no. I don't want that kind of safe passage. Kamuk left in secret sometime before me. We planned that she would meet me on the outside. We were supposed to stack our arms in the middle of the compound where the feds could see them. We had a lot of 2x4s and broomsticks. We painted them black, tied them together, and stacked them out in the compound. From a distance, they looked like weapons. It was time for those who wanted to leave the knee to go for it. We told them to take their rifles and shotguns with them. I would have to go underground. Carter Lamp, Leonard Kodog, and Wallace Black Elk would submit to arrest the next morning. They wanted the honor of being the last ones out of Wounded Knee, and they deserved it. Lou Bean said, Dennis, you've got to get out of here, and we don't want you to surrender. We want you to go tonight. They picked 6 guys to go out with me. Henry Wawasuk,
Potawatomi.
thank you, from
Potawatomi.
Kansas.
Potawatomi, sorry.
Potawatomi, from Kansas, who was my personal bodyguard, Leonard Foster of Navajo, and 4 others. That night, under the cover of darkness, we left Wounded Knee. The stand down at Wounded Knee took place on Friday, May 8th, 1973. On that day, 146 men and women laid down their arms and surrendered. Also surrendered were 15 inoperable rifles. The feds lowered our AIM flag and raised their stars and stripes while a helicopter hovered overhead. One of the marshals made a victory speech. The marshals and FBI were in full camouflage battle dress, looking for booby traps and hidden enemy holdouts. We had been promised that no goons would be let in, but they were there all right, robbing and destroying whatever they found. Carter Camp and Leonard Kodog in handcuffs, chains, and leg irons were put on a helicopter to the jail in Rapid City. All of the others were lined up, searched, and fingerprinted. Wallace Black Elk was manhandled and robbed of his medicine pouch and sacred pipe. Over the loudspeaker, a voice proclaimed, Gentlemen, the village of Wounded Knee is secured. Today, nothing is left of the buildings inside the perimeter of the 1973 siege at Wounded Knee. The government wanted no reminders that Indians once made their stand there, that they fought and died for what they believed in, but it does them no good. What happened here is not forgotten. Wounded Knee was the greatest event in the history of Native America in the 20th century. It was our shining hour, and I am proud to have been part of it. Wow.
That was Jesus Christ.
That was a lot.
Also, I see that we have a decent number of people here. We have 8 people. That's pretty good. But yeah, that was powerful. Like, holy hell. First off, I just want to say the fact that they, like, this just fucking shows you how this fucking shows you how the state will do anything and anything to uphold the interests of the bourgeois. After all, the state is literally just a hired gun of the capitalist ruling class. And the fact that they just shot through so many ammunition, so much, like they sent hundreds of thousands of rounds at them. Meanwhile, they only had a couple thousand. And the fact that they locked up that one person, I forgot her name. I'm bad at remembering names, but the fact that they locked up that one person when they said they wouldn't, when she was pregnant, like, that's just fucking disgusting. Fucking hell.
Yeah, that there was really a whole lot that went on in that entire chapter.
Indeed.
Yeah, I can't even really wrap my head around the idea of
like I just can't wrap I just can't wrap my head around the idea of just being under siege and being under fire for that long.
Like
That
it's
would
19
get
it was 1973. Like seriously? Those 50 years wait, what? I can't do math. It was 50 years ago, right?
yep. It
What the
was
fuck?
not that long ago. Yeah, exactly. It was not that long ago when this
Oh my
happened.
God. Wow.
That's the thing. That's the thing. They intentionally use misinformation to whitewash and defang the past to give the masses a reactionary and bourgeois outlook and a narrative that benefits the capitalists. That's the thing. They don't want us to know this. They don't want us to remember this. Yeah, we know that Wounded Knee happened, but we never get any. But our history books never go in depth what happened and shit and shit and shit. It was only like 50 years ago. It was not that long ago in the grand scheme of things. Like it really wasn't. But the fact that we think it was is literally because of misinformation being shoved down our throats from us growing up.
Technically, there's two events that happened at Wounded Knee. There is the Wounded Knee massacre that happened, I believe, in the late 1800s. I would have to look it up. And that's why AIM chose that site to go to for this protest of standing up for themselves against the government still trying to step on their fucking toes on their own land on this reservation. They chose that site because of it having been a historical thing. So what you probably learned very surface level whitewashed shit about in school was the original Wounded Knee massacre.
Yep, not this one.
If I remember correctly, and if that was the same thing, then I believe they said it was 1868 when we were reading.
Yeah.
I think so. I'm gonna look it up.
90. I want to say 1890.
1890. Yeah, I think so.
You're right. There was
Yeah,
another
1890.
1890 was the other one.
Yeah.
Something happened. I think the
Yeah.
Laramie happened in 68.
Yeah, December 29th, 1890 was the first the Wounded Knee massacre.
Yeah, where
Nearly
where
300 Lakota people were murdered by the United States Army.
Yep. Which is why they chose that site, and with what Sister Zen said, they chose that place to stand their ground and try and achieve self-determination for their nation against the US. Yeah. God. Does anyone have anything to say about this chapter? Because I'm sure there are a lot of interesting things that I'm sure there are a lot of really cool things that y'all want to say
I
about
can
this.
share it for a second.
Sure.
This is Dr. Robert. Just in short, this chapter just kind of left me kind of silent and sad, you know.
Same.
I talked to I talked to a military officer one time who said that in military school they learned that whoever has the most ammunition wins over 90% of the battles. And so literally, like, there's this kind of shock and awe strategy of just like knowing that you can outgun your opponent. It makes me feel a little hopeless because the American military industrial complex is the biggest one in the world.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow Vietnam beat them, you know. So
Exactly.
but,
exactly. You know that.
But it's just, it kind of reminds me just of how outgunned we are.
Yeah, it really is. The right is far more militarized and advanced in their militancy than the left right now, which is very scary. So
Hey,
yeah, it's sorry.
no, I was just gonna give some feedback. Go ahead, finish your thought. Sorry about that.
No, it's fine. I was just going to say, but yeah, just reading this, it just really emphasizes and nails down how violence and revolution is the only way to go about this. It's the only way because they literally don't care. There is no negotiations to be had. There is no voting. There is no voting out this government. There is something like that. The only way is to uproot it and replace it with a new socioeconomic system, with a new means of production and new social relations. That's the only way, because as shown here, they will do anything and everything to oppress, subjugate, and exploit you and kill you outright, or imprison you, even when they say that they won't, because they don't care. That's all I was gonna add.
Yeah, no, just a couple points. I've been listening to the story, and by the way, great reading there, Gabby. That was awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, I teach this in my class, even though I don't teach US history. I do teach it in my class. I do get it, but for a lot of these kids, it is, thousands of years ago. It's not even a year ago, and today time goes by so fast with social media.
Yep.
It's hard for them to retain something as like, okay, and relate to it today, because they're on to the next thing. And it's sad, because I remember when I was in high school in 1987, it had only been 20 years since the Black Panther Party and other movements had risen up. And for us, it was still there. We could still relate to it. There were still some people we may even knew who were there. I had a teacher, Black Panther, who taught at the school. I heard about him, but I didn't know much about the movement until I heard about it. And even then it wasn't enough. So imagine what our youth today are going through, being bombarded with so much info. I think what we will need to do is definitely reteach it and make it relevant to today. We can use social
100%.
yeah, we could definitely use social media as a way to do it. Because I think one example that was in there was the airlift, right? We always learn about the Berlin airlift, but here you got an airlift for the native people who needed it at a time. So that needs to be documented and told, that story. People don't know, but one of the biggest contributor to Angela Davis and a lot of the people out here in California when they were arrested was a white farmer. I forget his name, but he's from here, from the Central Valley. A lot of people don't know he put up his property, his money to bail them out a few times. So
Really, that's cool.
Yeah, your ally is going to be people you least expected sometimes, right?
Yep.
Then also just from just to let everybody know, I took tribal law when I went to law school, and one of the things that I wanted to know about this, what's up with all this law, tribal law, what does it mean? And then one, is confusing as hell, and two, the United States Army or military and government always has something to fall back on. It's called plenary law. Basically, it means that yes, you have tribal law, and there's things that they could do. They've divided up tribes just on that alone, and it's kind of it's an injustice if you look into it. But what I mean by plenary law is if who's right, the tribes or the American government. And plenary law means the American government has all the power on everything. If it comes down to it, they will rule. They will come out triumphant. And so I don't trust the U.S. government, the history,
Me neither.
treaty making and treaty breaking. I don't trust their word, just like we saw in here. And when we look at the laws, those laws are so confusing as hell. Some of the people we read in this book, I don't know if some of you know, but they went on to attack each other on a personal level. Some, and as you will see, the FBI was behind a lot of it, like COINTELPRO stuff that was happening. If you've ever seen the movie Judas and the Black Messiah, a lot of that
I've seen it.
Yeah,
I've seen that movie. Actually, sorry.
yeah, no, a lot of that was going on, but it happened to the native movement as well as the Chicano, like
The White Panthers.
White Band, everybody was infected. One final
Actually,
point, just during the Cold War, this is when it took place. Cold War was one of the longest wars. People don't think of it as a war, but it's a freaking ideological war. through proxy means, but the one thing that happened during the Cold War, shoot, what was I gonna say? Was a thing called Operation, I think it was called Mockingbird, Operation Mockingbird, where
I've heard of it, I think.
yeah, it was with the CIA and the US government had an understanding with the media about what would be published, how it would be published, what wouldn't be published. Boy, they were controlling the narrative left and right.
Yep.
And I would say that even today, they could do it and do it much easier today than before, because today we
With
give all,
Instagram.
yep, we give all our personal information. So as far as anything, we don't own anything. Just for those that
Yep.
listen, peace of mind. If you have a mail service and you get a letter or a package, it has to go through the US Postal Service. That is more
Yep.
secure than if you have an email with a .com. You don't own that .edu. You don't own that .gov.
Yep.
You do not owe any of those, and they don't need a warrant to search your stuff, even a .com. Whereas your postal service is different. So today is so much easier for them to infiltrate us, to pit us against each other. And I know this week alone, I've been dealing with some relationship issues that are popped up. And man, I got a question. What are these feds up to trying to destroy us? But they're
Yep.
wickedly wise. I just leave it at that. They're wickedly wise, just like they were.
They
back.
are. Oh, 100%, comrade. They will misinform, they will whitewash, they will defang, they will demonize, dehumanize, and do anything and everything to bolster and embolden reactionary sentiments and to give people a white supremacist whitewash narrative of what is versus what isn't. I mean, look at every single communist movement that has ever existed, and they're always portrayed as, as monsters, as monsters, as people who killed needlessly because they just wanted to. Lenin, Stalin, Che, Huey P. Newton, Fred Hampton, Malcolm X, and so on and so forth. Either you're demonized like Malcolm X, or you're co-opted like Martin Luther King, but still whitewashing at the end of the day, And one thing that I wanted to point out specifically is because you said that you are a history teacher, correct? Is that correct, comrade?
Yeah.
I want to know if this is still going on. But right when I was growing up, one of the ways that the education system is designed to misinform people and make things seem like it happened a long time ago when it actually wasn't, was whenever they portray pictures in history books, they will always portray them in black and white. Why? Because because in the modern era, a lot of people associate pictures with color with being, modern, quote unquote, and pictures that are in black and white as, old time in the past, quote unquote. So what they will do is that they will literally make pictures black and white from the Black Liberation era, from the Civil Rights era, from a bunch of these historical events, even though colored pictures were a thing back then. Like, for instance, for me, I did not know that there was actually a picture in color of Martin Luther King. I didn't know that. It was until my 8th or 9th grade that I saw the first ever picture of Martin Luther King in color in a picture. The first time. Up until then, I just thought that he was just some random guy that was born in 1851 or some shit like that.
Yeah, there's something to the black and white story. I think that has to do more with economics, so I would say, because they get their books and they don't want to spend a dime on it, but they want to be able to
in color.
books, right? And then they're charging you extra for everything. Because I didn't see color pictures of history, icons and stuff until later after college. I didn't see those. It wasn't around me, but still have.
But yeah, I just want to ask, when the history books that you have for your history class, are the pictures in color or are they still in black and white? When I was in my middle school years.
No, it depends on the era. 9/11, all that's in color, of course. And they even have pictures in color from the Cold War, the 1970s. But the truth is, I think you got a school of thought of historians who kind of like the black and white because it kind of separates that from an era of social media or even Polaroid pictures, instant. So yeah, but I think Alyssa has a question for you.
Sure. Yes, Comrade Alyssa.
It wasn't a question necessarily, but I did see that it was at least somewhat debunked, and it was essentially what Comrade Raphael was saying, was that color pictures were there and they were available, but essentially it costs a whole hell of a lot more money to get colored photos printed. So it wasn't necessarily I mean, I'm sure that there was plenty of racist shit going on behind the scenes as well, but that specific thing isn't necessarily based in racism.
Gotcha. Yeah. There is also that as well, that colored pictures are more expensive because of print, and stuff like that. So having it in black and white is far less expensive than if you had it in pictures. But yeah, this is. Wait, I have a question. I'm kind of a little bit embarrassed that I don't know this, but is Dennis Banks still alive, or did he already pass away?
He passed away, I want to say 2017.
Wow, 2017. That wasn't too long ago.
Yeah, very recent. Yeah. I did put in the group chat an AIM documentary, and also and Zen, she said she might be able to facilitate this for everyone. Ojibwa Warrior is on Prime Video. You know what I mean? So we might be able to, if you got access to Prime Video, you'll definitely be able to watch that anytime you want. You know, we'll talk about that further in the group chat.
Comrade Kwame, if you want, you could just use soap today, if you want.
Yeah.
Yep.
I know about that too.
Yep, I know about it too.
About that.
Actually, I was just going to say when when Raphael was talking about the Judas and the Black Messiah, I first saw that in Soap Today, and that was actually the first movie ever that actually like educated me on the Panthers. Like I knew about the Panthers before. I knew about the Panthers before, but I didn't really know much about them until I saw Judas and the Black Messiah. And I'm like, holy shit, these guys are awesome.
I gotta. That's a good movie. It's some inaccuracies, but it's overall a good movie. I send you a real good documentary. I put it in the group chat. It's about the Black Panther Party. It's like 2 hours long. Probably one of the best ones out there. I'm about to get there for everyone now.
And just is that the same one we saw? The brother from Texas, Kwame, we met from Texas. That documentary makers or somebody else? Oh, you're mute, Kwame.
You're muted.
I always forget the name of this. Let me look it up real quick. It's on YouTube. I put it in a group chat. And if the ones on here, if you haven't seen the first Rainbow Coalition, I can send that to everybody too.
Yeah. Oh no, and I bring that up too because as to the question of Judas and the Black Messiah, it is a good movie. You're gonna get caught up in it if you've never seen it. But keep this in mind, it really fell short when it came to ideology. Fred Hampton, they portrayed him as a hero, great speaker, but they really didn't go into his socialist views of the world.
Yeah.
Really dropped the ball big time there. I don't know if that was purposely done or I don't know. But I really,
it most likely was because even making a movie about the Black Panthers, for a fact that there isn't gonna get that much commercials about it, there isn't gonna be that much the movie is not going to be given as much exposure compared to a lot of the other bourgeois, whitewashed, reactionary filled ideology when it comes to other shows and movies. So already the movie was not going to get that much exposure. But even still, I already knew for a fact that when I came into it, that they were never going to actually allow a depiction of genuine socialist ideology. You know, like they were never going to do that. Never.
Yeah, and you know when they make the movie of Kwame's life, you know, Kwame, if they don't get it right, I'm gonna be out there protesting in front of the movie theater. Why they left out? No.
No doubt. Hey, I'm actually working on trying to get my book on in the movie theater.
Really?
Well, at least not in movie theaters, at least a movie or a
That's
TV series
awesome.
and stuff right now. So I got a couple people that's working with me. Y'all know Terry Woods, the novelist?
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, well, one of the person that Ghost wrote one of her books, her trilogy, Dutch. I'm in touch with him, and he's willing to write my screenplay. And his movie, Dutch, come out next month on BET. You know what I mean? So I think I got a good shot of trying to turn it in there. I'm hoping everything work out. I just recently sent him the book so he can start reading it. But yeah, I'm hoping I'll still be alive. So if they don't get this shit right,
Hopefully,
but
I hope he's
appreciate
still alive.
boots on the ground.
Oh yeah.
I just put in the group chat on Signal those two movies about the Black Panther Party. The first one is hands down like the best documentary ever that I've seen. I don't know, it might be a better one out there than this one, but definitely watch this. It's like about an hour and 53 minutes long, and then the first Rainbow Coalition documentary. I'm pretty sure most everybody almost probably watched that already about 1,000 times.
Oh hell yeah. But yeah, this is really awesome. You know, like this right here, I'm really glad. I'm really glad that we're doing that. That we're recording and that we are talking about movements like AIM. You know, that we're talking about the revolutionary history of these movements that have existed and continue to exist. You know, because political education is everything. You know, political education is what determines whether or not you fall under a reactionary line or a revolutionary line. You know, and you know, I hope that at the very least, you know, if anyone does watch these videos, I hope that it at least inspires and sparks one person to become a revolutionary and to educate themselves and to apply a revolutionary and scientific analysis on our socioeconomic system and our materialistic conditions. Because revolution at the end of the day, it's a science. It's a science of solving societal issues and societal problems, you know? So yeah.
Absolutely. I think you did a great job today, comrade. You know,
Thank you.
Now you got used to it. It's gonna be a sense from here on out. I think you had a lot of substance to these talks that we had. A lot of good insights. You know what I mean? So I appreciate
you
you
as well, Kwame. You too as well, and everyone here. Everyone here has something good to say. Y'all are awesome, and I love every single last one of you guys.
Absolutely. I'm gonna if no one else has anything else to add to this discussion, I try to keep it like an hour and a half. So
same.
Hold people's attention whenever they watch this on YouTube. You know what I mean? But if no one has anything else to add, we'll close this one out, and the next one will be this Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern time. And like I said, Comrade Gabby that hosted today will be the lead moderator for the Sunday group.
Right on. All power to the people.
All power to the people, as Alyssa as Shaka Zulu would say, all power to the people.
All power.
All power to the people.
All power to the people.
Miss Nexus, no big deal.
Well, everybody have a good night.
All
right. Good night now.
All right now. Boots on the ground.
Boots on.
All power.